Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with one of the greatest finds of my life, my new massage therapist, Rebecca C. Rebecca, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, I've been seeing the same massage therapist as a lot of people know, because I'm one of those guys that say your guy sucks, my person's the best. So I've been seeing somebody you know well, Josie Rehnquist, since 2005, I believe. And it was actually her that referred me to you, and kind of said, like, this is what someone like me needed, that it's kind of, you know, a lifestyle of wrestling. So I now am your patient through and through. And that's the biggest endorsement I can give you, is I'm very, very loyal to my medical professionals. And I love Joe's, but I hate to say it, Rebecca, I don't, but you're my new gal.
Well, thank you. I'm excited.
Thank you. I mean, it's, I don't want to say a new lease on life, but I definitely have noticed you know, I've seen you twice now in 4 months, and I've definitely noticed a big change in my quality of life. So tell anybody that's watching what it is, what exactly you do, what your specialty is.
Oh, it's kind of hard to start from the beginning.
Yeah, you bet.
So I take a full modality encompass into my manual therapy. So I've never believed that one modality is right for every single person out there. Everybody's body is different. And
Right.
So we need to take a look at that body and see what treatment is going to work for you. What's going to be the best for you? And if that's massage, great. If that's fascial stretch therapy, great. If it's cupping, awesome. But it's being able to have those tools in my toolbox to be able to use on you to get the most amount of results in the time that I see you. And so I've always taken that our body works as a single unit. And if one part of that unit isn't working, we need to figure out why and correct that imbalance.
See, and I think that's where I lean sort of more towards what you do. As I get older in life, of course, you know, I mean, I open my mind a little further, but I mean, I know certain chiropractors that would say, like, oh, physiotherapy is horse shit. You know, and I know physiotherapists that would say chiropractic horse shit. You know what I mean? So you kind of hear everybody that they sort of all, you know, we have our specialties and they sort of look down on other things. And I think what I do like about what you do is it's literally all encompassing. Like, to say you're a massage therapist, I don't actually like saying that, because it minimizes what you do, you know?
Yeah. I kind of tell people that I do manual therapy when I see people, because there's so many times when I've had someone come in and go, I want a massage. And I'll start that treatment and go, your body doesn't need a massage right now. Muscle mobilization is great, but really what we need to do is we need to start getting joint capsule work to get your body moving properly. We need to switch this up if we're going to get the most amount of results in this hour that I have you.
So, and explain, because I know there's a few wrestlers watching this. That's probably all that's watching. So, but explain to them, like, when you say joint capsule, manipulated joint capsule, maybe explain, if I had a sore hip, what you're going to do to, you know, and what exactly is the joint capsule?
So the joint capsules, also think of that femur head and that pelvic bone. They come in and they create this ball and socket type joint. Where that head of the femur is, that ball, is your joint capsule. Okay. So when we look at that hip, that pelvic bone creates almost like a full circle around, and that gives us that circumduction of that movement. So for wrestling example, we need to be able to use all 4 quadrants of our hip to be able to move and to get into different positions, poses, and like that. If that joint capsule is restricted, you might have very little to no sideways movement.
Right.
Or you might not have as much fast twitch, so you can't rebound or land or take off as quick. So a joint capsule is really what allows us to move properly through all of our functional movements.
Right. Okay. So, and that's the one thing I can definitely vouch for is, you know, when the first time I came to see you, I had really tight hips, really tight neck. And you definitely worked a lot more on my shoulders than my neck in that situation. And the same with when you adjusted my sacrum, which, and I've spent a lot of money on chiropractic, and I've never had anyone adjust my sacrum before. And if people think it can't be done, go see Rebecca, because I'm telling you right now, it can, and you'll feel it.
Yes.
You know,
Especially if you're out, for sure.
yeah, like and it's one of those things, like, you don't know, like I've always heard from people say, like, about the chiropractor, oh, they just keep you coming back. And after going to a chiropractor for a while, I kind of say, well, yeah, they keep you coming back because you know what it feels like to feel good. So you go back so you can get, kind of realigned. Now, explain, I guess, too, if you can. I was trying to explain to my buddy how you took a towel, you wrapped it up, you twisted around like a rope, then kind of forced it underneath my jawline and pulled back on it. And to the people watching, that probably sounds awful, but it's honestly one of the best things I've ever felt in my life. It felt so good.
So what we're doing is, so when we have the back, you feel on the back of your head, you have this ridge, and that ridge comes all the way down, and it kind of lines up with that mandible and that jawbone.
Right.
So what we're doing is, I assessed where your cervical bones were sitting and what needed to be adjusted or not. And the reason why I started to go for this movement is because we had no movement in those cervical bones, and we need to have movement. Right. So when I place that towel there and I pull back, we're actually tractioning that cervical spine to allow space, because space is what's going to allow synovial fluid to form. It's going to produce movement. It's going to reduce restrictions, and it's going to start getting mobility in there. And then I'm going to be able to start pinpointing after that, really where are the true restrictions coming from. Now that we can get movement out of those cervical bones, I can now actually palpate and feel what's moving and what is not moving.
Okay. See, and these are things like, these are, as many years as I've spent in physiotherapy, et cetera, these are things I don't know. And so I think there's a lot of guys that I look at, young guys coming up, that need to really be listening to what you're saying. Because I can tell them, but I'm not a medical professional, right? I could just say, do this, boys, it feels good. So to have somebody like you actually explain it to us, I think is extremely important. What made you decide to go into this line of work?
We've always come from an athletic background. Back in the day when I was young and not full of injuries, I had the dream of being a classical ballet dancer. And unfortunately, because I think I'm invincible, I ripped everything in the inside of my left foot, ended my dance career. And it kind of took me into a completely different aspect, because, working with physios and athletic trainers and all that stuff to kind of get my mobility back there, I felt there was a piece missing, because I wasn't able to. And they told me at that time, I was 19, and they said, you're never going to be able to get back in point shoes ever again. And I went, a big F you, I'm going to do that. But they didn't have the answer for me. And so I decided I was going to figure it out myself, and I got into personal training, and I didn't have the answer for me there either. And I started looking and seeking out different modalities. I took active release therapy. I went into cupping therapy and blading therapy, which is another term for like Grafton or gua sha blading. I got into all these different modalities, and it was like touching the surface, but it wasn't there. And then I had one person from the States tell me, you should check out this guy in Ontario that does something called fascial stretch therapy. It's new in Canada.
Okay.
So I said, okay.
And this is specifically what you've been doing with me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right. I looked them up. I registered for level 1, and I went out there, no idea what to expect. Did my pre-homework, got out there, and my life was changed. In that week that I was there doing all the hands-on work, I realized that this is the piece I'm missing. A majority of our pathology started at our feet. We have lines in our bodies that affect us all the way up, and they're talking about treating our body as one unit. And then I was like, this is it. I came back and I started applying what I learned, and I was seeing that, clients that I was working with on the gym floor, their chronic pain was going away. Their form was getting better. They were starting to see movement that they've never had before or haven't seen in years. So I took my level 2 to start working on assessments and stuff like that. And then as I was getting into my level 3, that starts working with nerve work, compression work, and concussion work. And honestly, just doing those modalities themselves has changed the way that I've been able to get an athlete, an everyday person, someone that sits in the desk, here and there, being able to live their life like they want to, because realistically, movement is life. Movement is medicine. If you can't move, you're not living.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what I tell everybody, like, stand up on one foot and put your socks on one at a time. don't sit down, so you can kind of maintain that balance and somewhat that, prop your foot up and stretch your hip while you're putting your socks on, so you can kind of try and maintain flexibility. And I think that's exactly what you said. What's been missing from, a lot of the physical therapy that's out there now is, again, I've seen my first physiotherapist when I was in grade 10. I pinched a nerve in my lower back, wrestling in high school. And so, you figure I've been seeing consistent physiotherapists since I was 15 years old. I'm 48 years old, and you're the first person that's ever manipulated sort of my joints or stretched me during massage. Like I go to the physiotherapist, he does some, Joe Stig's in there and absolutely tortures me like I owe her money. And I do feel relief for a day or so. But since I've seen you, like, you kind of made a comment that it's been, X long since I've seen you. And it's been kind of like, yeah, because I felt good. Right. And it, for me to say that, a lot of wrestlers are martyrs. And I'm sure in your line of work, you hear like, oh, I'm a wrestler. No, we're the toughest and everything hurts because we're so tough.
Yeah,
And
it was a good game because I pulled my shoulder out of joint.
yeah. Well, the way I look at it is you also deal out, excuse me, choking. You also deal a lot with rodeo people, which to me, those are real men. So I'll just end the conversation on that there. Those guys are real men. But for me to openly admit that, I simply don't hurt as much. I have much more movement. My neck is a lot more free than it was, in January or December when I came to see you last, or the first time, sorry. So, and even in my shoulders, right, the way you kind of stretch the shoulders out. And I don't want to say it feels good because it's somewhat uncomfortable, but it's one of those like hitting yourself with a hammer that feels really good when you stop,
It's that hurts so good feeling. It's like teaching that body, what does stretching really feel like? There's like, we have the philosophy, there's movement without pain, but it's teaching your body what pain really is, right? Stretching isn't pain. It should feel like a deep stretch, and we should get you to that 7 or 8. But if you're feeling that pinch or that sharp pain or like that, I feel like I'm tearing, well, that's not what we want to work through. That's right. Where we stop and go, oh, why is that happening? Because that's coming from somewhere else. And we need to take that step back and figure out where that's coming from so we can start getting to where we need to in a free movement.
See, and you're saying what I need. My friends, my brothers and sisters in wrestling need to listen to this, because you can tell people to listen to their bodies. And again, as you age, you kind of realize like, oh shit, I wish I would have listened a little more when I was younger, because there's injuries I probably, would have felt less long-term if I would have dealt with them properly, instead of just being that, well, you just wrestle through it, you just work through it and get on with it. Right. Yeah. So, and that's where we need more people like you out there kind of, protecting us from ourselves, so to speak.
100%. I think we all think, and I mean, I'm bad for it too. I started getting into a sport or, my game myself, and I feel like I'm invincible and I can do anything. And then I find myself going, no, like there's a limit. If I go past that, I'm going to hurt myself. And it's just because I've become aware of my body. I know where that line is, and I can push myself again and again and come out of it in one piece.
Right. And I always say, like, there's all the old cliches, like, the mind will give out far before your body does and things like that. But there's also the, you got to listen to what your body's telling you. Cause like you say, one thing I always teach my kids when I'm coaching amateur wrestling is, are you hurt or are you injured? Cause those are different things. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what you do does not injure it. It gets uncomfortable, but at no point does it hurt. The best part is, like, I like the bruising, because then I tell, like, I had these big bruises under here, and I was telling people that my wife was getting rough in bed, and so
amazing.
She didn't think it was quite as funny as I did, but she didn't get mad either. So now, how long have you been practicing? Because the truth is, this is, people don't know, this is the first time I've actually seen you without a mask on.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah. It's amazing the world we live in. But yes, this is my face.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, not that it, I just like kind of like, geez, yeah, we haven't seen each other with our faces.
It's true, we haven't. It's crazy. I took oh my gosh, how many years? 7 years ago now.
Okay.
I've been working with fascial stretch therapy.
Okay. And so if you could wave a magic wand and get everybody to do everything right, what would be sort of the top of the list when you said, okay, if I can give you 3 things to do, these are the ones that are going to change your life the most.
Oh, I already know them because I tell those 3 people or those 3 things to all my training clients, actually. There's a hip series that I give all of my clients to work with hip mobility and function, because ideally we should be able to get on and off the floor without ever using our hands. So our hips need to be fully functional in all ranges.
That's adorable.
It's fully possible. Even for you, it's fully possible. So there's a hip series that I give all of my clients, drinking 2+ liters of water a day, because that hydrates not only our bodies, but our fascia as well. So when we look at fascial stretch therapy, our fascia is the largest connective tissue in our entire body. It connects not only to our surface muscles, but our deep muscles, our organs, our bones, ligaments, tendons. So when we stretch through those lines, when we get into that fascia itself, we can stretch quite a bit deeper than what a typical massage can get into, because as we activate that fascia, we can actually get a lot deeper. That's the same type of cupping style I do. So I know that I did a little bit of different cupping on you that I'm sure other therapists have. I slide and glide, or I pin the muscle and I glide it, because I'm lifting that fascia and I'm creating a slide and glide movement to get a deeper release below as well. Those 2 are huge on my list. And the third one is to get outside every day.
Okay.
Get your feet in the grass if you can. If it's too cold, then to at least go outside, because fresh air actually helps us. It's scientifically proven. It helps to realign the frequency in our body, especially if we put our feet in the grass. It'll allow our body to actually feel in line, because all of our fascial lines start in our feet and work our way up. So when we start to learn and feel our body better, then we can be more aware of ourselves, because honestly, a majority of our pathologies start in our feet. So if we feel our feet better, our proprioception will be better. And at the end of the day, our movement will be better.
Okay. So I guess with that, and this is now I'm just pontificating, I shouldn't even do this. When you see, like, guys lifting heavy weights, which I've never done because it's ridiculous. But
all the time. Power lifter myself here, but
weightlifting is one of those things, like I always did it because I felt I had to, but I just loathe it. But you see the guys working out and they're wearing them little thin, tiny shoes. And I always thought it was just kind of, I didn't understand why, but kind of what you're saying now is it kind of keeps you one with the ground.
It does. So when I'm actually training clients, I have them train with no shoes on.
Okay.
Because they can feel their feet better. And as a trainer myself, if I'm watching your feet and they fall in, that's going to tell me huge of what's giving out in your legs and in your hips.
Oh, okay.
Because if we're falling inward, our medial line is taking over and our lateral line is actually giving out.
Okay. Now explain to us dummies what the medial and what the lateral lines are.
Our feet fall in, the inner part of our legs are what's taking over. So the inside of our knee, everything that is pulling by our groin, that's taking over. And our IT bands, glutes, and outer shins are completely deactivated at that point.
So inside medial, obviously outside lateral?
Yeah.
Okay. See, these are the things I like to learn, because there's where I start nerding out. Now, did you take how much kinesiology did you have to take in university? Like how much time did you spend, dealing?
Enough. I took a little bit of everything under the sun. It's funny, when I went to university, I decided I was going to do finance because my athletic career was over and I hated every second of it. We'll never do that. And then got into the sciences and took a ton of anatomy and physiology. And as much as I love kinesiology, I think it's glorified because it doesn't teach anything functional.
Okay.
So it's very textbook. And
right.
I learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, I learned more from the courses I took after that than I ever did in there.
Right. Okay. A little more practical, maybe?
100%. Don't get me wrong, it's really good to understand where the muscles in the body are, but that's about as far as it goes. I had a trainer that worked with me that had a kin degree, and I was like, we need to get the glutes active. And she's like, cool, we're going to activate the glutes, we're going to contract them. I'm like, you have how many glutes? And she looked at me and she's like, I have 3. I'm like, no, you don't. And so then it's like, how many ranges of motions and planes of actions do you have in those? And she's like, it's like, there's so many. Okay. And so they don't teach you with the muscles you have, what planes of action do they work on? And what do they do? That's huge.
So it's really, and again, I don't want to minimize it because I could never be this person, so please don't think. So essentially it's really, really hardcore anatomy class.
Yeah. hardcore anatomy class. Is really essentially what it is. You learn more when you get into things like when we did massage therapy in my first year, it was all review because of everything else I'd taken. And it was like all anatomy and all bones and structures. And then, the basics of massage and stuff like that. And I had to laugh because people that had taken kin that were in there were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this was like, I forgot about this. I didn't know this. This is new. Thinking, but this should be review for you. But when I took fascial stretch therapy, I learned more in that course than I did when I took my kin because it was more hands-on and it was more realistic to what we do in our bodies.
Right. Can you explain to, you mentioned the fascia being the largest. I'm going to get you to go back to that. Can you explain exactly what the fascia is, like what it is, what its function is?
Yeah, for sure. So fascia is basically a connective tissue. And it's the largest connective tissue in your body. So if you like cut your arm and you see that like white tissue-ish under your skin, that's your fascia.
Okay.
That's what that is. And it runs through our whole body. It's a giant sheet within our body. So the top layer is that white that if you were to cut, you'd see. And that itself then gets deeper and it starts to wrap around our muscles. It runs through our muscles to connect those fibers together. It'll run through our tendons and our ligaments, and it'll wrap around our joints, even into our organs and everything like that. So realistically, fascia itself is our full single unit of our body that holds us together.
Which is why when you're talking about the body being one thing, it's all connected through the fascia.
Exactly.
Light bulb just came on.
Sometimes I need to talk a lot to get out the right words.
or sometimes you need to say a lot of words for it to sink into some people.
Yes.
So then when you're dealing with that, so if someone says just stretching at home, what would you say is the kind of the best thing they can do to sort of, and I'm not going to ask you to get up and demonstrate stuff, but just to sort of, okay, if I'm sitting at home and I feel like I feel like I've got some sort of tendonitis, is there anything a person can do gently and safely at home to sort of loosen that off?
Of course, there's tons. We'll just use the forearm, for example. So when we have tendonitis, whether it's, golfer's elbow or tennis elbow on either side, tendonitis comes from the muscle belly that's pulling, and we're feeling it in the tendon. And so I start teaching people how to do soft tissue mobilization. So how to really mobilize the muscles in the forearms or in the legs to allow the muscle belly to relax. And that's going to relax the tendons that are there. So once you start to, it's not so much like I need to massage it, but a lot of times it's like, if you think about that international sign of money, that you use your whole hand, that's going to allow you to start actually grabbing and manipulating the muscle in our body. And that movement alone is actually going to separate the fibers and allow space for healing.
Okay, so you're just sort of rolling the muscle between your fingers.
Exactly, just rolling.
Okay. Now, I asked you before we came on the air, or before we started recording, how many hours a day that you actually spend massaging? And you said it fairly glibly, like it was nothing. But the answer was, for people that don't know and think this is an easy job, 5.5 to 6 hours a day was the number you gave, correct?
Yes.
And now, how many other massage therapists have to go to each other to get their hands worked on from doing this line of work?
We actually don't get ourselves worked on nearly as much as we should.
Okay. I was going to say, is that a stubbornness thing or a time thing?
It's a time thing, really, because
Right.
For the end of the day, if we need to be able to get in, we have to fit into their schedule as well, or we're seeing each other after hours.
Right.
And when you find a therapist that is as yourself, that really works for you, their schedule is normally full. So we tend to try to juggle at least like once a month or once every 2 months. We try to get in at least like get our bodies worked on, but it can be quite a challenge.
Is that right? So, and the reason I asked that is I always find it funny. Like you always find like the mechanic's car always needs fixing. The painter's house always needs painting. So, and I was wondering like, well, who cleans that dental hygienist's teeth? When does she get that done?
It's the same for us too. We don't get our bodies taken care of as much as they should.
Well, and then that's the other thing is so you also do personal training. How do you fit that in? Like how many hats do you wear, kind of thing?
I wear a lot of hats. It's a good way to put it. My passions for the body run quite big. I've always been into a functional movement and teaching people from the ground up. One of my dreams in life was to create an all-encompassing clinic where you could come for, a massage, fascial stretch, osteo, all that kind of stuff, but then also come for your training as well, because being able to communicate between the two is huge. Right. So when I work with my clients on the training floor and I have an issue and I'm like, this isn't going to work, I need to get you on the table, I can actually just do that, and I can take them over to the table and fix the problem and then get them back on the floor.
I've never even considered that a thing. Like, I've never.
One day it'll happen, my goal. But so when I'm trained, I've really only kept probably about 5 clients at this moment, because I'm taking my master's in manual osteopathic therapy as well. And so I'm trying to, not overload myself too much. But I've worked with them for years. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is when I first started training with them and then adding in the modalities with them, honestly, it's like the results we get is incredible, because if they run into an injury, I can fix it. If they run into, those weeks where things don't go according to plan, we can get them back on track.
Right.
So it allows me to wear multiple hats for the same person if need be.
How is this not more of a thing? I guess is my next question. Do you know what I mean? And again, because, you kind of think, okay, yoga is a thing, the gym's a thing, spin class is a thing. Like you say, you could kind of do this all under one roof.
I could. When I worked at a gym a while ago, a buddy of mine, we kind of started the fascial stretch department when we were there, and they were pretty hesitant about it because it wasn't personal training.
Okay.
And so I find like the gym atmosphere is like, this is a gym, we work out in the gym, this is all we're doing in the gym. If you want to do that kind of stuff, you need to have a health center where you do it in the health center. I don't want this table on the floor.
Ooh, that's a fairly myopic way to see it, I guess.
So there was a lot of things that we kind of had to juggle in order to allow to have our table. So when I have my massage table on the floor, it obviously doesn't have the sheets or anything. It has just those fascial stretch straps, those 2 on it.
Right.
And that's it. So it's just the bare table with the 2 straps. I can whip it up, I can open it and close it, and it doesn't take up any space. But you'd be surprised at how many gyms do not want that on the floor. There's only like a couple clinics slash gyms in the city that I know of that are completely okay with allowing that to happen.
Really? Hey? So then what we have to start, I guess, working on is the attitude at the gym. You know what I mean? Like we as the consumer, I guess, have to start asking them, hey, how come you don't provide this service? Because I know even, excuse me, when Josie, who referred me to you, Rebecca, I'm just saying that to repeat to the people, Josie Rehnquist, and your clinics where you work now is Relaxing Wellness, right?
Yeah, I run through my own. So my own company is C Vitality.
Okay.
And so I work through the Relaxing Wellness Company, but anything I do outside of the Relaxing Wellness Company is through C Vitality.
Okay. So yeah. And then now what's the website, and what's the social media and stuff for C Vitality?
It's actually just C Vitality for Instagram.
Okay.
Or my own is Rebecca Fit 101. And my website creators have just put my website under construction, but it is just cvitality.com. So that'll be up and running soon. Okay.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you is when you get into the personal training and things like that, how much diet do you see? Because there's one thing a friend of mine kind of always taught me, and obviously you can tell from looking at me, I don't take his advice because he's jacked. But he always says, like, you can't out-train a bad diet. How much of what you see when people come to you and say, hey, I need to do this better or that better, I just simply need to be in better shape to perform at an elite level. How much do you see as a lot of it is changing up their diet?
There is a big thing when it comes to diet. I'm a firm believer in flex dieting. Okay. Because I've seen so many people rebound or binge eat because they can't eat anything.
Right.
And that doesn't work. And one thing I absolutely hate is when I create a negative impact or negative relationship on food. I don't want that. I want you to have a good relationship with food.
Okay.
That's important, right? Like, it's not a cheat day, it's an indulge day.
Right.
And when we create our flex diet, yes, I do want you to obviously stay within your macros or your calories. And we're going to look at that protein, that fat, and those carbs, and what are healthy alternatives for them. And if you're staying within that in a day, then you're fine. If you
Right.
want to have a cookie, make sure you log it and it stays within your protein, carbs, and your fat, and you're fine. If you want to have that, it's going to take it away from eating the plate of vegetables you want to have because it has more in it, even though it's smaller.
Yeah.
As long as they're staying within that, I've seen amazing results because one, they have a healthy relationship with food. They're not angry with what they eat, and they don't beat themselves up if they have a glass of wine or they have a cookie.
Right. Well, and like everything else, it's about choices. Like you said it exactly right. How badly do you want that cookie? Because you're going to be hungry later when you want that salad for dinner.
Right?
You know?
100%. The only time that I've seen like where you really have to be careful in what you eat is if we're in that last 4 week of prep to going on stage.
Oh, okay.
Because if you are going to compete and you want to be on that stage, you have to be ridiculously lean. Like we're looking at diuretics that you're on, the food you're eating are a diuretic type food. We're waterlogging. We're doing all these different things to allow yourself to bloat and lean really quick, but not lose the muscle mass so that you look good on stage. And then it's allowing to feed ourselves properly so we don't have that like reverse diet off of stage where you gain 30 pounds in like a week, which is terrible, which happens way more often than you think.
Is that right? Hey, so they just blow right up.
Blow right up because they're like, oh, my show is done. I can eat whatever I want. And then they just eat like crazy. But it's like, no, you can't do that. Your body hasn't had that for like a minimum of 4 weeks. You've literally been on a strict diet. You're in a lean fighting machine. You have to ease your way back in there.
You must, yeah. And I bet, because I know I do it, right? If and when I clean up my diet, I'm usually good for about the 6-month mark. Then I discover a bag of cheesies or something again. But I do find like immediately I feel like shit after. So I always wonder, like, how do they feel when a bodybuilder, a fitness athlete goes and then like crushes a pizza after that contest, what they must feel like.
Oh, it feels so gross. I did a bikini competition when I was 20, a long time ago. And of course, we celebrate after and with a big container of candy and all that. And I felt so gross. Like my body felt just disgusting because I was like, I haven't eaten any of this stuff for like 6 months, period.
Right.
And now I'm just shoving myself through it. And my body didn't know what to do with it.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, never again.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I do. Like pizza's I could probably live on pizza if you'd like. It's my go-to. My wife be like, what do you want to have for supper? Pizza. It's my answer every time.
Right?
But I mean, I'd be 350 pounds. Do you know what I mean? Like, every once in a while I try to mix a chicken salad in there.
Which is a good thing.
Well, right. And I mean, with COVID too, that's the one thing you hear. Do not want to get talking about COVID because boy, oh boy. But that's the one thing you do hear about COVID, that a lot of people that are getting really sick, obesity is kind of a fairly large factor,
Yeah, I've actually seen it quite a bit with people coming back and having kind of lost not even so much that control, but like lost that willpower to say no. Right. When you're stuck at home all the time, and eating when you're bored is a real thing.
Oh,
it really is. And being stuck at home for this whole time, you're seeing it like crazy. So the amount of conversations I've had over this last year, like put healthy snacks around the house, eat when you're bored. But if you're picking up like a handful of peanuts or celery or something, it's healthier than the chip bag that you'll have in your cupboard. And so it's just trying to create those little changes. Because I'm seeing like a lot of the athletes I'm seeing coming out of it. So I used to do way before COVID. I would do a ballistic stretch for a bodybuilder before they go on stage. And so fascial stretch can be used as a warm up and a cool down as well.
Okay.
Just a treatment. So I would warm them up before they go on stage because they can pose better, their striations are more apparent, and they can actually get in and out of their positions way easier on stage. So it's more fluent.
Right.
And I'm seeing some of them come out of this pandemic, and it's like, oh my goodness, like we have to get you recovering and moving because your body is you've been working out, but you're stiff. You've been eating really unhealthy. Yeah, you've gained muscle because you have all this food that you've packed on, but the muscles aren't moving at all. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, like I have a friend who, my old tag team partner is a workout machine. I don't know if I know anybody that just physically likes working out as much as he does. He lives to do it. And, today we heard that gyms aren't opening yet again for another, I think 3 weeks or something. 2.5.
Good thing I have one in my house.
Yeah, right. Like I'm looking behind you. You got a pretty good setup going on. And he just like, I could just see, we were out on the patio having a beer. We were doing the right thing. But I could just see the tension in his face when he just said, like, I just want the gym to open. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Well, it's such a, like, our minds and our bodies are so connected. And we work a lot with that in the fascial stretch community because we hold our emotions in our fascia.
Right. Okay.
You know? And I'm seeing it a ton with people when it comes to being able to work out because it's a release. And it physically is an emotional release because we take that emotion we hold in our bodies and we actually are releasing it through that workout, which actually decreases that cortisol and allows that serotonin to, bring up and allows that endorphins to come. And if we don't have that release, all that emotion that we've had over this time is just literally sitting there and it's stuck.
Right. Right. See, and I always got that release through wrestling. Do you know what I mean? So I've had to find other ways to get rid of that. And he also being a wrestler, now he doesn't have that release either. Right. So I know he's, and he's one of many people that are really struggling with that. So, hopefully we can get things back on track here. And I mean, the fact that, again, like, how many COVID cases came from you personal training people? I'm willing to bet the answer is 0, and so, we could do a whole nother conversation on that, I'm sure. From a health advice, is there anything you could any advice you'd give people sort of on how to keep your immune system strong, sort of what the best things they could do there?
Yeah, I love talking immune system because I think it's really important with how we function anyways on a daily basis. Not only staying mobile and active, being active is huge for our immune system for one. The more we sit, the more our immune system decreases. So we all need to get up and move around and be active, and that helps to decrease our cortisol, which is going to allow our immune system to function properly. But we need to increase those vitamins. I think, I've heard a lot this last year, which has drove me crazy. And I'm like, you need to increase your vitamin A, your C, and your D. And they're like, oh, I need to talk to my doctor. I'm like, no, you don't. They're vitamins. Go get them and increase them. Like,
if you take too many, you'll pee them out. Don't worry about it.
Exactly, right? And so, like, those 3 vitamins are huge because not only do they help with your immune system itself, but it helps it's vitamin C is like a natural killer for the common cold. It is going to help boost those T cells and those killer T cells to kill whatever you have in your body. And vitamin D, which Canada has been labeled as, especially Alberta has been labeled as, everybody has a vitamin D deficiency anyways.
Right.
And so we need to bring that up to help with our mental state. Vitamin D is huge for our mental state. And if we're down, our immune system is down, period. So the more vitamin D we have, the higher we're going to be, which is going to allow our immune system to function at an optimal level.
Right.
That's huge. And then berries, like, as much as I don't want to sound like a hippie, but like elderberry is a natural antibiotic. Get into your berries, eat your fruit, because they are going to help keep our immune system at a nice level.
Right.
Like, people say I'm crazy, but I got 2 kids, one's 3 and one's 8, and they haven't been sick this whole year. They haven't been sick the year before. And I mean, you put a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old in a daycare full of a bunch of other kids, they should be sick. He's never been sent home.
Yeah, that's a statistical impossibility almost.
Right? I mean, the only time that he's been sent home with COVID is because he had to get a tooth pulled and he was picking at the tooth and he was bleeding and they had to send him home. Like, how is it okay for a parent to have to find time on their schedule to bring their kid home in this last year because they're sick all the time?
Yeah, for sure.
We've got to be able to keep those kids healthy, and that comes from what we're putting in their bodies.
Fair enough. I can't argue with that because I haven't, I've been doing the right things this year because I don't want to get COVID. And I'm somebody that's good for, a good cold and 2 flus a year, or vice versa, 2 colds and a flu kind of thing a year. And I haven't been sick. I have not had a shred of a cold or a flu for 1.5 years now. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it's, so people can say what they want, but like, I've heard there's part of me that says, what do you mean the flu's disappeared? Because you hear like, oh, there's been 0 cases, but at the same time, it's like, I'm living proof, that I have to kind of listen somewhat because I haven't had the flu and my immune system, I'm a straight up pussy. I admit that. Like,
I rarely get sick myself. And I think it's pretty surprising because I work hands-on with people all the time. And before COVID, they'd come in when they're not feeling 100% because massage actually can stimulate the immune system and you can feel better.
Right.
And so, for working with so hands-on with people, I never get sick. And so, I mean, it does speak to everything for what you put in your body affects how you are.
Right. So what you're telling me then is all the cheeseburgers aren't going to help my immune system.
I mean, depends on how you make your cheeseburger, but yes.
Well, it's going to be pretty rowdy.
That's fair. If you make a homemade burger, Sure. There you
Oh,
go.
come on, a homemade burger. No, I'm rolling through that teen burger at A&W.
That's fair. It's pretty delicious.
What's that? Sorry?
So that is pretty delicious. I haven't had a teen burger in forever. I rarely eat burgers out and about now.
Is that right? Yeah, well, and that's the thing is people always say like, oh, I work out and I eat right and I can't lose weight. And I always say like, it can be harder for some people. I don't want to minimize that, but then there's also part of me that's like, that's bullshit because I ate like shit, drank 2 beers every day after work, ate all the sugar I could get in my mouth. And then for a year, I didn't drink those beers after work. I stopped eating like shit and I quit eating sugar and I lost 35 pounds. Do you know what I mean? So people are like, oh, I can't just stop eating so much shit.
It's really what it comes down to. And it's funny because when I'm training someone, they never want to tell me everything they're eating. But when I work with somebody at the clinic, they're willing to tell me everything. I don't know if it's because of the setting. And I'm like, what? Why? Just tell me everything to begin with, and we can get past this hurdle, and you can get to what you're doing, and you can get into having those results.
Well,
really.
It's the same attitude as the guy that goes to the dentist and tries to tell the dentist they floss every day. Like that guy, all they do is look in people's mouths. They know, right? Like if I'm doing everything you're telling me, there's no way I'm going to have a roll of flab around my midsection, after a certain amount of time doing the work and et cetera, putting the time in. Yeah. If we're working for 6 months and I've lost 5 pounds and I'm doing everything you told me, well, again, that's a statistical impossibility you're sabotaging yourself somewhere along the way.
100%. You are. And I mean, I've seen it time and time again where like I'll create, we create this beautiful program for you. And there's always that disclaimer. I mean, I can guarantee you the results, but you're the guarantor.
Yeah. Well,
and they're like, what?
Yeah. Well, it counts on us, right? Like I came to see you the first time. You gave me stretches to do when I left. And I did them for the first 5 days pretty steadily. And then I didn't do them for the next 3 months because I'm lazy. Right. And so the first thing I did when I came to see you is admitted, hey, I didn't do those stretches, because the minute you start working on me, you're going to know I didn't do the stretches.
100%. I tell the people all the time, I'm like, you don't have to do your homework. You can lie to me all you want. The moment I start moving a limb, I start feeling that muscle, because it's like we listen with our hands is a really great way to put it. I'm going to tell in seconds. I'm going to tell if you did your homework or not.
Yeah. That's what you do. And that's what I say. Like, don't bullshit these people, because that's what they do all day. Like they know as soon as, like you say, even with my physiotherapist, he'll be like, did you do your stretching? Yes. And then he'll go to work on me and be like, no, you didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you know how far along I should be at a certain point, period.
Yeah, totally. Right? And I tell people when I create a full treatment plan for someone and say like they had every injury under the sun, I'm like, okay, I'm going to see you every week. Our goal is to get you from every week to every other week to every third, once a month, and so on and so forth. Because don't get me wrong, I want to see you all the time, but ideally you should be able to keep the stretch and hold it, and you should be able to keep what we do for a long period of time so your body knows it.
Right.
But if you don't put any of the work in that I give you, that's going to take a hell of a lot longer, because there's only so much I can do in a session with you. You need to carry that out at home.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like you say, I'm coming in, you're working on me for an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes at the high end. And I can't expect you to get, what should be 8 hours of work through a week in that hour, and that's just, and then people are like, oh, massage therapy doesn't work probably because you didn't do the homework. Same with physio. Oh, my physiotherapist, you didn't do what you were told after. I'll guarantee it.
100%. It's like, so one of my very good friends is a chiropractor, and I love her to death. And we have this conversation all the time, because she goes, I can always tell when somebody comes back and they're just as bad. And I go, well, chiropractic is great. So, but the problem is we're not fixing the right imbalances. You're giving them a homework. They're not seeing the change. They're not doing it.
Right. And
that's the missing piece with a chiropractor. And that's what I tell her all the time is, if you don't fix the imbalance, your problem will never leave. No, they always have to come back.
Yeah. And that's one thing I appreciate about, say, Josie, and same with my physiotherapist, is they'll say like, I can't fix what you're dealing with here. You need to go see this person. You know what I mean? And then it's up to you to go see that other person and work on, whatever it is. But also don't just take their word for it. Like you say, if your chiropractor says, well, you don't need massage therapy, then I think your chiropractor is insane. Do you know what I mean? Like my chiropractor has a massage therapist in the clinic. Do you know what I mean? And again, not because that I don't go there, not because that person's not good, but because I've had Josie for the last, 16 years. And now I have I have you, Rebecca. Um,
Yeah.
so on that note, I'm going to let you get out of here. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to have you back on in probably 6 months, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I'm going to come to your clinic more often and we'll talk mostly about the change. I don't, I'll sign a privacy thing or whatever, so you can't get in trouble talking about a patient. And we'll speak very freely about the fascia treatment that you do, because I think for people, that have been wrestling for as long as I have, and guys that are coming up, I think this is something extremely important. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have met you. And literally in 2 treatments, my friends, I can't tell you in 2 treatments the difference that Rebecca C has made in my quality of life. I can't say enough about it. Please go see her when you get a chance. Can you please repeat all your social media information and email and everything like that?
Of course. So my email is info@cvitality.com. My Instagram handle is @cvitality or @RebeccaFit101.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your care. Again, I can't thank you enough. And I'll be seeing you again real soon. You can count on that.
For sure. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks again for coming on. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.